Okay, here we go.
All right.
All right. Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending my workshop today on ways to engage students and get them to practice math in your class. If you could take a minute and sit with a neighbor and describe an activity that's gone well in your class. Describe something that maybe blew up in your face, because we're all, we've all had these moments. And then my favorite is finish the sentence. A good day of teaching is when, go ahead, discuss this with your neighbors.
I always choose an exam, murder mystery activity that is generally successful. Like that's successful. It covers a lot of content, so they have to really put together to remember everything that's the whole year. And I think there's a lot of different points where kids can get engaged with it. I mean, there's kids who just be engaged because they want to remember the content. There's the competitive aspect of solving the mysteries. There's guys. There's some can try to figure it out. They try to game it a little bit. And they generally all are engaged. Yeah.
It's a good way to everybody working and moving in different groups that they didn't match up.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot well this year. I would say like I did an escape type activity earlier in the year that my students got super into and were really engaged with, because there was I put a timer up at the beginning of the period and I was counting down until there was a double and so that they were all working together. I did an exploration yesterday. So there was different boxes around the different clues in it. So it was alternating between logic puzzles and things that we had just recently in class. And it was really nice to see the collaborative nature of it. The situation did not go as well when I did it in class, but totally.
I like that you finished first.
Yeah. Right, it opens up the option. It makes it more accessible for us.
And I feel like what ended up happening was I just ended up interrupting a bunch of times. Like, okay, everybody get to here. Now try again. And it just kept not working. At the end.
Yeah.
Did you guys get to the last sentence? A good day of teaching is when?
Students are engaged. It feels like there's something meaningful happening. Yeah.
It's that, and that I just feel like I actually see the light bulb going off for some kids that when they don't understand a lot of the concepts, it's just
Okay, true. Right? I'm going to cut you guys off there. So a couple things that I heard, some things that went well with teaching, and I'm just going to generalize these things. These were when students were doing a lot of the work, and you were kind of setting back or stepping back and giving them the space to maybe work on these problems. You're not the one yapping at them in the front. You're not the one pushing them farther and faster. And that's what this whole entire day is about. It's just about giving them, or just different ways to give students opportunities to show what they're knowing, to show those light bulb moments. For me, a good day of teaching is when my students are doing homework and I'm not doing anything. So that's my goal for these, and I hope that you guys walk away today being able to apply these to your own lesson, which is one of our objectives. But then just to be a little bit inspired, this is going to be springtime. We're all kind of getting burnt out. So if we can maybe walk out feeling like we can use something extra in our toolbox, then that is another goal for today. And then, as we've already done, sharing some activities, you guys have some great ideas. So this is just the surface of it. So let's get started. The first activity, which some of you may have done before, or a type of activity, is stations. I do mine a little bit differently. So station one, what we'll do, I guess, is that each team is going to have their own station. I opt to not let my students wander around. It kind of keeps the whole environment a little bit more controlled. So what I do is I start station 1 at table 1, and I start station 2 at table 2, and so on, and just kind of space around the room. And I give about 3 to 5 minutes for them to start on the problem together. So I also inform them to keep the station shut. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes just to look at the problem and just try it with your neighbor. You guys can use some scrap paper or the note sheet to record your answers. So students work collaboratively. It's okay. Yeah, most of my stuff is pre-calc. I just subbed in a geometry class and I didn't remember a darn thing. So during the students are working collaboratively. I should probably say this.
There's a -1/2.
So generally, if we were wondering what teachers are doing, I'm usually walking around helping groups. I have my timer set to maybe about 4 to 5 minutes. And I just kind of wait until the timer goes off. So say the timer went off, I know that you guys might not be fully finished. But when the timer goes off, everyone at table 2 will pass the station to table 1. Table 1 passes the station to table 8, and so on and so forth. So you receive your new station. And when you open it up, you'll get the answer to the problem that you just finished. Hopefully I did it right. So the reasons why I like this, students get instant feedback. Even if they don't get through every single one of the problems. I know, Michelle, you mentioned that you don't like it when students are working at different paces. Sometimes I overload these stations, so even if they get 2 or 3 of the problems done, then that's better than none, right? Yeah. So I just really like that there's instant feedback. The answer key is right there, and it just, once it gets set up, it just runs itself. I will say that this is best for a block period, because I tend to do about 5 minutes per station, and if I have 10 states, it's going to take up a big chunk of time. So they're good for reviews. They're good for sub days. This is a really good activity for sub days, especially a sub block day. It just is a great way to kind of get through a bunch of problems during sub days. Pro tips, I use a timer. It helps me stay on task. And then I also use cardstock because otherwise they're a little bit flimsy. Some things that I will say students might run into, you might run into kids just opening it up and copying it down. And I know that there's no good way to kind of get around that, but I always tell kids, you're going to get out what you put in. And that's not going to be an option on the test. So this is almost a good, easy way just to kind of try something, see how you're doing, get instant feedback. So that's the first activity. Are there any questions about stations, how it's run?
It works. It does work nice.
It does work nice. Yeah, according to your sub. The other thing that I would tell you is that I like to have a place for students to record, a designated station answer sheet for students to record their answers on. Sometimes I have them turn it in as kind of some accountability that they are working.
How do you manage that if you're doing it as a review activity? The different problems can require a different amount of time.
So that's a good question. I tend to, if they're a different, like an easier question, I'll load that up a little bit more. I'll have a lot of different small, easy, quick questions, and then maybe one problem-solving question. I tend to not use too heavy of questions and stations to kind of keep it lighter. If we're practicing a bunch of skills like solving, like I could see a lot of like area. This would be great for surface area, volume, all this stuff. And each different card could be a different type of formula. So if you want, while I'm kind of transitioning to this next activity, think about how you might be able to use this in your classroom, what topic it could cover, and I will get started on the next one.
I was actually thinking about stats. I mean, I really was talking about, well, I was just talking already about how I like to expose your students to some placement questions. Since most of them are college bound, so you haven't taken calculus, but you can take calculus with us. So that could be, pick some, select
ones that
So if you jotted a couple things down, I am going to keep moving on. If you jotted a couple things down, I am going to move on to the next one. Heads together is what I call this. It's just a quick, easy, you can use this as an exit task, but it's a quick, easy check-in for students and how they're doing on a certain activity. What I would say is that this is mostly going to be only for a type of solving question, like solve for this side, solve for this angle. And that all comes down to the fact that when they're done, they have to answer or add up all of their solutions together. So how this works on the teacher, actually let's do this on the student end. Students are going to be in groups of hopefully at least 3. And the way that the paper is set up is that you will each have a problem that's facing you. So what you're going to do is you guys will simultaneously answer or solve that question. So I'll give you guys a minute to solve for the solutions. Yes. And you complete the problem that's facing you. The next thing that you'll do after you're finished solving your own problem is that you're going to shift the paper one way clockwise. So obviously this works better when there's a full table. And then you check each other's solutions.
So that again, so we put our work.
You put all of your work on, and then you guys actually do it on the sheet.
Oh.
So kids simultaneously do the work on the sheet.
I didn't do the triggers.
So then what you do is once everyone's done with their problem, you shift the work one way clockwise, or one way, one rotation clockwise. And then you check the work of the person who completed that problem. Obviously this works better when there are 4 different people at the table. But once everybody agrees, and I tend to usually have the kids write their initials after they've graded it and verified it. Once all the problems have been verified, somebody adds up all the solutions, they call me over to the table, and I only check the sum. So I'm not grading all 4 problems. I'm looking at the sum, I'm saying yes or no, and if it's no, then I walk away and they gotta figure out, they gotta reevaluate what their work is and where they might have gone wrong. So, if I kind of tier this, so what I'll do is I'll start off nice and easy with some easy solved problems. Then I'll add on another round. So after they finish round 1, I'll come around with another sheet, and then they get to do the process all over again. You guys don't have to solve this, but you're just getting the idea. So I tend to use this for solving, and it's really good for factoring because there's so many different types of factoring that you can do. And we could use it for trig, but kids really like it. Sometimes they get in competitions with the tables to see who can get through all the rounds at the same time. Some pro tips, I just can add that on here. I just color coordinate. You can see from my key, to keep my rounds organized, I have to do them on separate colors. So like round 1 is orange, or round 2 is green. So that's helpful for me. It's a quick, easy way to kind of see, it gives me feedback on, oh, wow, round 3 is really stooping kids. Like, we might need to revisit how to factor by grouping or factor by, taking the square root, that sort of thing. Or solving by taking the square root. So I really like that. The next 3 I'm just going to sprinkle in front of you guys. So they're going to go a little bit faster. The next activity is spoons. And that's going to go along with this. And I'm going to tell you that spoons is a little chaotic, but it's a lot of fun. So if you're willing just to have a little bit of controlled crazy in your classroom, then I would really highly recommend spoons for you. It was really good with my Algebra 3 kids. It was really good with smaller groups. So I know that isn't always the case, but smaller groups is a lot of fun with. So here's the concept. It's just like the card game spoons. There's always one less spoon than there are competitors, right? So if we were doing this in out of our 2 groups, I would only have the numbers 1 through 6 up here. To get a number, you have to answer math questions correctly. So I did put some of these packets on your tables. So if you go to the spoons section,
Oh, sorry, books not ready.
that's okay. Do you see where it says spoons questions? So if you flip behind that, there's going to be a sheet that says spoons questions. So what I tend to do is I just come up with 8 to 10 questions. That's it. 8 to 10 questions that I find important that kids are, that might need practice. And what I do is I let each table have only one sheet, and each table also has a runner. Each runner wears this most fashionable running sash. Nice and bright so that I can see this. So a ground rule is that the only person away from the table, like the only person who can be away from the table has to be wearing the runner sash. And that kind of keeps the crazy a little bit reined in. So all tables will work together collaboratively on the problems for the spoons questions. When they feel like they got the solution and the work, one person comes up to me to get their problem checked off. If they got that problem right, say that you did number 5 and you got number 5 right, then you can take this back to your table. The goal is to get as many of these as possible, and there's always one less of these than there are table groups. So it's kind of nice. So for you guys,
You have 3 sets up there.
I know, I just wanted
For
to
4, that would be for
4
tables.
different table groups.
Okay.
Yeah, so this would be for 4 different table groups, and there's only 3 sets up there. So then there's some strategies, right? Some kids start from the back and go front. Some kids, it's just funny to see what they come up with. But it's just kind of a fun way. The kids are always super into it because they don't want to be the one that doesn't get the number. Something else that I've gotten in the past are kids are like, well, if they don't get number 4, are they discouraged to keep going? Well, no, not necessarily, because they might not get number 4, but another group might not get number 3. So they're still in the game. So it's just kind of a fun way to review. I'm going to call this one a sneaky way to do a worksheet. So if your plan is just to do a worksheet with 10 questions, might as well throw some spoons up there and get them running around the room a bit. But it is a little bit more chaotic. So talking about the teacher role real quick. Once you set ground rules, because I usually do spend at least like 2 or 3 minutes kind of talking about the role of the runner, talking about the role of the table. Once you have those ground rules set, you kind of just get to stand up front and check off answers. Some fun ways to make this actually kind of more student interactive. I let them hide these around the room in obscure places. And so it's really funny to watch this. Like, I know it's not super math-centered, but like if the ones are hiding behind like all of my pencils hiding back there, you know, kids are like looking around the whole room for all these numbers and they're doing all sorts of, it's just kind of funny to watch them do that. So I think that's a little bit funny. If you want to keep things a little bit more controlled, just put them on the board. Or sometimes I just put them on my table up there when I'm sitting and checking things off. I like to kind of have them hide because I think it's funny to watch them rummage through my room.
All the ones are in one spot.
Yeah, so I'll put all the ones in one spot, and I'll put all the 2s in the spot, and I'll kind of like have a corner hiding, you know, hanging out. So
it would be smart not to tell the other groups where they are.
Yeah. And so sometimes, so then my Algebra 3 kids got really into this, and they wanted to be the ones hiding. So they would find these hiding places, then they would know where all the 3s are, but the other group wouldn't know where all the 3s are. So it was kind of fun to do for them. But yeah.
Would you suggest this for a block day also?
I would suggest it for a block day, especially if you know, like an SBAC, right, situation where you know a good amount of your students are going to be gone. I know that that's not super ideal, but it's definitely good for like a block day. The only problem is that since there's only 10 questions or so, like you aren't going to want to hang more than 10 of those cards up. It might only be good for like a half a block day and then have some more structure later. So that would be, I would say block day, or if you want to just kind of have a crazy little Friday party, it'd be kind of fun on a Friday too. Especially at the end of the year. So yeah. If you want to go a bit crazy, hide them in obscure places, or keep them at your desk or take them there. So I have 2 more if you guys are interested. This one's also a sneaky way to hide practice. It's really just a sneaky way to get kids to do a worksheet. What I do is I have 24 questions on a worksheet, and you guys can flip. I think I have the puzzles activity somewhere in there. Honestly, I just find 24 questions that I think are pretty quick. Because for every question a group will get right, they get a piece of the puzzle. And that is the whole goal, is to make the puzzle. And I don't know what the magic sauce is, but they want to make that puzzle. And in order to make the puzzle, they have to do the math problems. So I think I have about 9 different 24-piece puzzles.
You have 9?
I think, yeah, that you guys can all borrow whenever you want. I will say that this runs so smoothly. In fact, I know Mr. Merritt was watching me do it, and I was sitting at that table, and the kids and like it was just kind of checking things off, not moving. But it does take some setup on the teacher's part. So let's go through the teacher's roles and the students' roles. Might be helpful. One thing that I would recommend doing is I would assign 1 puzzle per table, and I keep the puzzles up front. They don't get to have them at their tables. So I keep the puzzles up front. I also, for this activity, make them wear the most fashionable runner sash. This limits the number of students allowed to be around the room. Runners have the most rules. I tell runners that they have to make a nice line if people are waiting for me to check. That has been a problem in the past. So I kind of talk about making a nice line. I also have some ground rules for myself. I usually say I will only check up to 2 problems at a time, or 3 problems at a time. In fact, I think my pro tip is only grade 1 problem at a time the first time you do it, just so that you can kind of get in the habit of just kind of checking them really quickly. I also have some other rules. The runner has to touch home before they go back up. I also have it so that everybody has a sheet, and the runner needs to bring everybody's sheet up with them so that I'm seeing that everybody's participating. So that's another thing, because in the past I had the runner not have to have their own sheet, and guess what? The runner doesn't do any work. So those are some other things that I've kind of put into place just to make sure that everyone is working, everyone is at least writing down and asking questions. So it worked out really well for me. I know it was with AP Prep students, but it worked out really well for everyone to have their own sheet and bring up all 4 sheets this last week.
Is there a lot of downtime? Or like if
There was in the beginning, because I did up to 6 problems. I said I will grade up to 6 problems this first time, and they were all like super into it, and I just sat there for about 15 minutes and I didn't have anything to do.
But is there downtime for the students? That's what I meant. Like if the runner is waiting in line.
No, I grade really quick. I usually have it on my answer sheet so that the answers it's nothing but the answers.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking really quick, and it's just kind of lined up, so I can grade them pretty fast and hand them back. That's another reason why at the beginning I recommend only grading 1 at a time or 2 at a time, just so that you can get through a little bit more and there's not as much downtime. That's a good question. Other questions about
So what do
puzzles?
you do when the first group's just not done?
Oh, it doesn't happen. But for the first group that's all done. It doesn't happen that often because normally I kind of only give maybe 45 minutes to do this, 24 questions in 45 minutes. It's usually pretty good. But I order them, so I have scratch and sniff stickers for the table that's done first. I usually have homework ready to go. If the table finishes, they get awarded with the homework first. So there's other things that you can do there. At the end, I do kind of reserve a minute because some kids really just want to make that puzzle, so I let them put the puzzle together. Like if you have to put this puzzle together, then here, take your box, but then that's another way to get all your puzzle pieces back. Because I'm like, here, make the rest of your puzzle. Oh, put it all away. So, but yeah, other questions? This one's one of my favorites. It does have a little bit more time to put together because you do have to find 24 questions. But if you have a shared prep with somebody, like Lisa and I would do it, and I would get 12, she would get 12, and it kind of splits the work, you know. All right.
And you can get smaller puzzles too, right?
You can get smaller puzzles, yes.
As long as it's like consistent that all the groups have 10.
Perfect. Yeah, 12-piece puzzles, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the last one. We have about 5 minutes, so I will be cognizant of your time. But this last one's a lot of fun. It's speed dating, so the kids like the name of it. you know, because, ooh, I get to go on a date in math class. So what I tend to do is I have all of the groups, I have everybody face their desk to each other. And what I do is I hand out a card to each partner. So each partner gets the same card. So if you guys want to do like a little mock partnership, let's do a little mock run through this one, is good. So why don't you guys have your, put your desks into each other so that you guys are facing each other. Okay. So all desks facing each other. And we can just, yeah, and we can just put these up here. And then Travis, I can be your date. So each partnership will start off with the same card. This is your conversation piece for your date. So you get to talk about math during your date. You know that you've had a good date when you guys come up to the same conclusion, right? So you do the math problem, get an answer, right? What I do as a teacher is I'm walking around and I do have to check and I make sure that everybody got their one question right. So I look at their work and I look at their solutions and I double check that they got the answer right. Because then what I do is that I'll say, all right, everybody facing the window is now going to stand up. You guys are standing. And then we're going to rotate. So Grace, you come over to Travis' seat. Travis, you come over to Lindsay. And Lindsay, you get to go over to Michelle. Introduce yourself to your new date. Oh, bring your card with you, I should say. Yeah, you introduce yourself to your new date. Give them your card, right? Just like you give them your card. And then you complete each other's math question.
And then we have a sheet that has room for
Yes. So at the very end, you guys might notice that there's a sheet where students are recording their answer. And not only is there a sheet where students record their answer, but if you flip to the back, I have some date questions that they can ask each other. Yeah, so if they finish their question before time's called, they get to ask each other some get to know you date questions. It is cute. So this is really good for social students. It's also really good to help get students out of their box a little bit too. So even the non-social kids, they kind of get to know somebody. Because they get to talk about if there's anywhere you want to go in the world, where would it be? And it does start this nice little conversation.
What happens next?
What happens next?
What will be the next rotation?
So then you get your card back.
We switch back, okay.
So then we switch back. So then here's your card, here's my card.
Got it.
Thank your person for a great date.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And then everyone facing the windows gets to get up and do another rotation. You guys can rotate all the way back to your seats. Okay. So, and it just keeps going until we get through all the problems. And I can take your cards back. But yeah, it's cute, it's fun, it's an easy way to get through a bunch of problems. Here's what I'll say that I really like about it is that students take ownership of the question that's on their card. Generally, I make sure before we start our speed dating process, I tell them that now you are in charge of the card that you have, and you need to be able to explain it to the person that you're on your date with. And so then they do talk about the math, and they kind of explain how to do their one problem over and over and over again. But then they get to hear the other problems from their peers. So it's a little bit of teachers or students teaching each other. So some teacher rules, setting up the room does take a little bit of time, and kind of explaining who rotates does take some time. But really this one's great because you only have to come up with half the number of cards as there are students. And then just make sure, I guess my pro tip, use a timer, and then have the get to know you date questions ready because they really like that card. Kind of brings some fun to the math class. So that's what I have for you today, and it's time. So before you go, I have a couple things. First off, all good teachers have an exit task, right? So I have an exit task if you guys could answer these 3 questions. Yeah, thank you. And I really do appreciate you choosing to spend your work time with me. And as a measure of my appreciation, I put together a couple things for you. The first thing is that I have a little thank you card for each one of you, but then it also has a USB device that has all of the templates and all of the lesson guides for every type of thing that we did today.
Oh,
So you can go on there, and the Heads Together template is already ready for you to go. You just need to put in new equations or new pictures. So it saves you some time there. So here you go. Hope that you guys all came up with something or can walk away with something you can use or try in your classroom in the next month.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
job.
Yeah.
This is awesome. So what's for next week?
Oh
You
gosh,
guys
well
do
let's
this
see.
for us?
I actually was really stressed. So I have whammy. Oh my, the kids love whammy. I have